If you're choosing between a spinning setup and a baitcaster, here's the quickest decision rule. Start with spinning gear unless you already know why you need a baitcaster. A spinning setup is easier with light lures, awkward casts, and general bank fishing. A baitcaster becomes useful when you're repeatedly placing heavier lures near docks, branches, weeds, and other tight targets. One isn't the beginner reel, and the other the expert reel. They solve different problems. By the end, you'll know which one fits your fishing, how to set it up, and how to avoid the mistakes that cause most tangles. First, make sure you can identify them. On a spinning setup, the reel hangs below the rod. It has a wire bail, and the line leaves a fixed spool in wide coils before passing through large guides. On a baitcaster, the reel sits on top of the rod, usually behind a small trigger. The spool rotates as the lure pulls line out. That spinning spool gives you more control, but it can also keep turning after the lure slows down. That's what creates the tangled pile called a backlash, or bird's nest. For most first-time anglers, spinning gear removes that problem so you can concentrate on more important skills: aiming the cast, feeling the lure, and noticing bites. It also handles light lures well because the lure only needs to pull line from a fixed spool. A small jig, little spinner, or weightless soft plastic may barely move a baitcaster's spool, but it can leave a spinning reel smoothly. If you're fishing for trout, panfish, smaller largemouth bass, or anything that eats small presentations, spinning gear is usually the easier tool. A dependable first setup is a spinning rod around 6.5 to 7 feet long, with medium power and a reel in the 2500 size range. Add roughly 8-pound monofilament. That's not perfect for every fish or every lake, but it's forgiving and useful around ponds, open banks, docks, and light weeds. Power tells you how much force it takes to bend the rod. It doesn't describe the rod's length, and it isn't the same as action, which describes where the rod begins bending. Now, check the lure weight range printed near the rod handle. This matters more than beginners expect. A tiny lure on a heavy rod feels like throwing a feather with a broomstick because the lure can't bend and load the rod. An oversized lure on a light rod can overload it. For the easiest practice, choose a compact lure near the middle of the printed range. The rod should bend slightly behind you, then straighten and launch the lure forward. If you're forcing the cast with your arm, the lure and rod may be poorly matched. To make a spinning cast, hold the rod with the reel below your hand. Hook the line against the rod with your index finger, open the bail, and check that the line is still secured under your finger. Bring the rod back, then move it forward smoothly. Release the line when the rod points slightly above your target. Don't swing as hard as you can. Let the rod's bend do the work. When the lure lands, close the bail by hand and gently tighten any loose line before you begin retrieving. Cranking the handle to snap the bail closed can leave loose loops that later become knots. Your first target shouldn't automatically be the middle of the water. Fish often travel and feed along edges. Stand where you can cast parallel to the bank, down the outside edge of weeds, or beside the shaded side of a dock. Try to keep the lure near that edge for several seconds. A cast that travels along a weed line gives a fish more opportunity to see it than a cast that crosses the weeds once. Look for shade, a change from grass to open water, a small point, moving current beside calm water, or insects and bait fish disturbing the surface. So when does a baitcaster become the better tool? Think control, repetition, and cover. If you're making the same short cast beside dock posts, dropping a jig next to a stump, or pulling largemouth bass away from lily pads, a baitcaster can be faster and more precise. Your thumb can slow the rotating spool while the lure is still flying, so you can make it land softly instead of smashing into the target. A medium-heavy casting rod with stronger line can also help turn a fish before it wraps around a branch or buries itself in thick weeds. The trade-off is that you must control the spool. If the lure hits the water, clips a branch, or gets slowed by wind while the spool keeps spinning, the line has nowhere to go. It piles up inside the reel. To learn without constant frustration, don't begin with a tiny lure. Use a compact practice lure or casting weight around 3/8 to 1/2 ounce, as long as it fits the rod's printed range. Practice over short grass or open water. A compact weight flies predictably. A bulky lure catches wind and changes speed. Before casting, turn the reel's braking system fairly high. Use the spool tension knob near the handle to remove obvious side-to-side spool movement and check your reel's instructions because adjustment procedures vary. Press the spool release while keeping your thumb firmly on the spool. Make a short, smooth sidearm cast. Gradually ease thumb pressure so the spool turns, then press down before the lure touches the ground or water. Your first goal is a clean 30-foot cast, not maximum distance. Accuracy and distance arrive faster when you stop practicing backlashes. If the spool overruns during the middle of the cast, add a little more brake or use slightly more thumb pressure. If it overruns right when the lure lands, your thumb is arriving too late. Change only one thing at a time, then make several casts. Don't tighten the spool tension until the lure can barely move. That may hide weak thumb control while ruining every cast. Use the brakes as training wheels, practice short casts, and reduce the brake one small step only after you're consistently clean. Line choice can also make either setup easier or harder. Monofilament is inexpensive, stretchy, and manageable, which makes it a good first line. Fluorocarbon can resist abrasion and be less visible underwater, but it may feel stiff and springy, especially on a spinning reel. Braid is thin, strong, and sensitive, but a backlash can dig tightly into the spool. You don't need an advanced braid and leader system just because experienced anglers use one. Start with simple monofilament, then change when you can name the problem you're trying to solve. Whatever you choose, use a matched combo. Don't put a spinning reel on a casting rod merely because it attaches. Spinning rods use larger guides to manage the wide coils leaving the reel. Casting rods use smaller guides and are designed for a reel on top. Check that the rod type, reel type, line strength, and lure weight range agree. A pre-assembled combo is often the simplest beginner purchase because those basic parts have already been matched. Here's the decision in real situations. If you're carrying one rod from the bank, learning basic casting, fishing from a kayak, or using small and medium lures, choose spinning gear. If you're regularly throwing heavier jigs, spinnerbaits, or topwater lures beside thick vegetation and hard targets, consider a Baitcaster. Clear open water often favors lighter spinning presentations. Dense weeds and submerged branches may favor the stronger line and control of a casting setup. In either case, cast lower and smoother in wind. A high floating cast loses accuracy, and a Baitcaster can backlash when the lure suddenly slows. Finally, if nothing bites, don't blame the reel first. The reel delivers the lure. It doesn't make empty water productive. Change your casting angle before replacing gear. Run the lure along the shaded bank instead of straight away from it. Let it sink beside the weed edge. Slow the retrieve or choose one smaller lure. Adjust one variable at a time so you can tell what helped. For your next trip, take a medium spinning combo, simple monofilament, and a few lures that fit the printed range. Practice smooth casts, close the bail by hand, and work visible edges. Move to a Baitcaster when heavier lures, tight targets, and thick cover create a real reason. Choose for the water in front of you, and you'll spend more time learning to fish and less time untangling equipment.